Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It doesn't seem that long since I was last on. A few hours kip, and we go again. I'm joined by John Yogi Hughes, who, ladies and gentlemen, don't worry, he isn't a hostage somewhere. Hold away. And Patrick McGilp. We have seen the progress of McGilp from a young man with green and white hoops in his bedroom to a more sophisticated character sitting there with greys and lattes, John. Are we also going to see the development of Nicholas Kühn? He is the man on everybody's lips this morning. John, did you watch the game? Did you get a chance to see the highlights?
I saw as much of it as I could. Unfortunately, my tech when it comes to recording these things is really bad, and I don't know how to fix it. I bought everything I could to, but anyway, basically recorded chunks of the game and then went on a loop. And so, you got 8 minutes and then you get the same 8 minutes for 30 minutes and, all that sort of thing. So I've watched all the extended highlights. I've seen as much of the game as I can. But certainly, if you certainly should start with lots of positives because Kühn, wow, that was some run out he had. That was an amazing 45 minutes. That was quite something. Now, look, bottom line is he had lots of space, which you don't get in our league, and you're not really getting the Champions League. But what you want to see from your players in a pre-season game is that they're fit, they're sharp, and they have quality. And everyone did that to one degree or another. So no, it was tremendous from Kühn, and the first two goals went Scales, Hatate, Kühn, and then him just driving on. So it was sensational to see, and of course, possibly the best thing that happened in the game was that assist to Kyogo. What a run by Kyogo! That's the kind of thing you're thinking. How soul destroying must it be when you're Kyogo? You're thinking, 9 times out of 10, this is a sensational run, and none of you blind men can see it.
Yep.
What a run, what a take, what a goal, but what a pass! That was a worldie of a pass from Kühn. That was sensational stuff. So, yeah, man, look, there's lots to be positive about after that, I think, Paul John.
Absolutely agree with you. And what you're always kind of cautious of, Patrick, when you're on here, because it's recorded and it is put on a loop and you become a meme if you make predictions or you get too excited at times about certain things that don't quite work out. I remember a headline going on around the signing of Shane Duffy and Albion Ajeti, and it was quite an excitable Acsom headline, and it's out there for ridicule forevermore. But, we are talking about 45 minutes in a pre-season game. I get it. But there was something about Kühn coming into this pre-season whereby you thought to yourself, the January transfer window, I think, was Brendan Rodgers' window. I think the control that he's got at the moment, going through the summer, was the same in January. That was one of the reasons we only brought in 2 players, one permanently, one on a loan deal, because it was about the quality. And I don't think we'd seen the quality in Kühn. So that was the one thing that was going to register with me coming into these pre-season games. The last few months of the season with Jamesy Forrest coming back to fruition was tremendous, but you're thinking that's not going to continue, even though he has looked very sharp in pre-season. So I was putting all my chips on Kühn to be a bit of a player this season. And I think he gave us signs of that in the first 45. He was really sharp. He was ghosting past players like they weren't there. The confidence was oozing out of him, and 2 brilliant finishes. And as John says, a tremendous assist as well. Is he the answer? Is he the answer to the right wing problem? Patrick McGilp.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. As people are saying online, and as I'm sure a few of us are thinking, maybe the board are sort of rubbing their hands and licking their lips, thinking, "Oh, good, we don't need to sign a player." But he did have a fantastic 45. Obviously, the highlight being that assist that he played. He did get better throughout the course of the second half of the season. Last season, obviously, had a horrendous start. Then we became aware of, I think he had surgery in his mouth. His teeth were removed and he lost a lot of weight. So he was taken out the side for a period. Goes back in towards the end of the season, scores a few goals, and he doesn't quite nail down that place. Forest had a really good end to last season. But I mean, if he can play anywhere near that level for the rest of this season, we're going to have some player in our hands. And I'll admit, I never stayed up to watch the game. I seen this. I think it was an 8-minute highlight clip on Man City's YouTube channel. So I caught that, and some of the build up from our midfielders to lead to those 3 goals was exceptional.
Yeah.
The only disappointing thing is Matt O'Reilly's right in the heart of it all, and I've resigned myself to him going. So I'm now backtracking, and I'm really, really hoping he stays. I'm hoping Atalanta don't budge from their 17 million position, because he looked phenomenal last night. And the runs in behind, I didn't think we've seen enough of that last season. John mentioned there Kyogo, that's what he's best at, and we never played to his strengths at all last season. There was a lot of injuries, a lot of out of form wingers, a lot of changes in the side. But hopefully a few wingers coming back onto a game. A year under Brendan, they know how Brendan wants to play. Hopefully they can get the best out of Kyogo, because there was a period there where we thought he might leave, and Brendan's confirmed he wants him and another striker and a youth striker. So hopefully we found a way to play to his strengths. But the play from almost everyone in the first half last night was exceptional, and Yang as well, and Palmer running forward for that 4th goal. I think it was Yang that squared it to him. It was a.
Go on.
Was it? Oh,
it was actually Kühn. Yeah, no, I had to go back a few times to try and work it out. It was Kühn that made the break. Yeah.
The commentator
never
was at least 3 yards offside, but we'll just ignore that.
Oh, was he? I thought he looked on in the replay, but he never froze in the highlights that I seen.
Yeah.
So I could take that. I'll take that.
I was sitting.
Take a 3-3 draw against Man City.
Aye, 100%.
No, but can I just say that could that be? I mean, I'm getting my hopes up now, and again, that's always a mistake. But could that be the biggest benefit this year of having the money? Is that they don't bite somebody's hand off for 20 million for Matt O'Reilly? Mm-hmm. Even if they let us down with a poor spend, could the biggest benefit be that they don't feel? Because I think in any other year, 17, 18, 20 million for Matt O'Reilly, he'd be out the door. And maybe this year, because we've got so much money, it's just not necessary.
John, I think it's a great point. It's an excellent point. Aye.
I think we're from what Brendan Rodgers was saying as well. He was making the point, Matt O'Reilly's not stupid. He's very dedicated. He knows where he's going. I mean, why, if you're O'Reilly, and he is an intelligent boy, and he knows, yes, will he make a lot more money in Southampton or some godforsaken hellhole at the bottom of, the bottom.
Shout out to our fans from Southampton. Let us know your comments.
I said some godforsaken hellhole. You know what I mean? But one of these, one of these Yorkshire towns or whatever it is, have managed to pump hundreds of millions into a club, and you get down there and you get slaughtered every week. And you win about 5 games and manage to stay up. It's a load of money, but who wants to do that? Matt O'Reilly's never given the indication he wants to be that guy. I think if Atletico Madrid were still in this conversation, he'd already be gone. They're obviously not. So he's looking at his options, and the Atalantas of the world. The Italian league's not what it used to be. I mean, we're all sort of prejudiced because I think most of us who are a bit older than Patrick maybe came up on the old Channel 4 Italian show, and it was super glamorous and it was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. A real sort of getting over there was a real feather in your cap, but it's not what it used to be. So at the end of the day, I'm projecting all my positive thoughts into Matt O'Reilly's head and hoping that somehow he's taking note, but I don't know. I'm hoping that we can hold on to him for at least another year. It seems if the right bid comes in, it won't happen. But I think with O'Reilly, it has to be the right bid and the right club. So I don't think if someone bids 25, I don't think he'll go to a bottom table club. I just don't think he'll do it. I think he wants to make an obvious step up. So we'll see what happens, but again, quality player, and looked really good again last night.
he looked great against better opposition than we're used to playing. But John, I think the point you make there, let's use the Jota scenario. Matt O'Reilly doesn't want to play in Saudi Arabia, does he? He's got a vision for his career. And if they were to come calling and table a massive bid, I'm not sure Matt O'Reilly would be too happy.
And what a lesson that is. What a lesson that is, isn't it? For anyone who's thinking about being greedy and just taking the money. What a lesson that is. Going out to the desert and play a couple of games every few months. You can sit there in your jacuzzi full of money, but essentially you'll not be playing any decent football. And that is a real lesson for someone like O'Reilly, for whom the football is far more important than the money. And we know that because of the movie made, essentially going out of contract to back himself before he went to MK Dons, all the rest of it. We know the football is more important to him than the money. And, fingers crossed, everything crossed, that he sticks to that.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be speaking to Peter Grant, who obviously coached him at Fulham. We're going to be speaking to him later on this afternoon for This Is Acsom, and that will be on your YouTube channel on Friday night. But I agree with you, John. I don't think it will be a money decision for Matt O'Reilly. It will be a football decision. And great point. We're in the rudest financial health we've ever been in the history of the football club. And that might, be the one positive from us having all that dough in the bank, John, and no spending it, is the fact we don't have to take 18 million euros for what is our star player. So on the point of Kühn then, the wingers, you tap into a winger, Patrick, like Kühn, and you can get performances like he had last night on a regular basis. You're getting two players for one because, as John said before, you're tapping into Kyogo again, aren't you?
Absolutely. And Maeda's going to be in there, obviously doing what he does best. Forrest has played his part. I thought it was Gang. It's actually Kwon. Making these runs in behind. Where we're not going to face that every week in the SPFL, the high line that Man City play. But in Europe, we can certainly take advantage of that. We need to be bold and use that to our strength because Kühn and Maeda are very quick, and so is Kyogo with those runs in behind. But wingers I thought were a massive problem for us last season. When we're struggling, we struggle to score goals. I thought, we obviously had sort of leaks at the back. I'm not that impressed with Scales. Taylor has his weak points. We were chopping and changing the defence all the time. Up until his retirement announcement, I didn't think Hart was all that good last season. Which, need to give a shout out to Schmeichel, by the way, because he had a fantastic 45 minutes, I think it was, he played. Made some exceptional saves. So, I was quite a big fan of that signing and hopefully can continue in that vein of form that he was in last night. But yeah, I mean, we had a bit of a leaky defence in parts last season, but I thought it was a attacking play that, might have cost us a few points and probably frustrated the supporters as well, more than anything else. I think that was a criticism levelled at Rodgers, as well as not getting the best out of Kyogo. It maybe wasn't as exciting as peak Ange Ball. If you remember the sort of the draw against St Johnstone at home and going out to Kelly in the cup, I think it was perceived as quite boring. I think we've seen last night and we've seen at points towards the end of last season how exciting and how dynamic Brendan's football can be, and hopefully we can get closer to the entertainment value that he brought last time round. Because as we've seen, Forrest, Sinclair, Roberts, it was the wingers last time round that really sort of lit up that side, and hopefully with Kühn's performance last night and even Palmer getting a goal, we can see a bit more flavour in the side and have a kick on and have another successful season.
Well, you've mentioned them. You've mentioned the bold Palmer, the enigmatic Honduran. And see, when he came on, right, one thing I would point out is the defensive work that he didn't have. He had no time for that last season, but he was working hard defensively. And I love to see that from the wingers. Interestingly enough, that there is now a group, a hardcore group of people that think because you watch a game of football, John, and you comment your observations on a certain player whose name just happens to be Mikey Johnson, that you have some kind of personal vendetta against the boy. And I saw it again last night. Mikey Johnson had two gilt-edged chances, right? 1-on-1 plus the header from Palmer's boot. He was terrible defensively for, I think, Man City's second goal it was, right? He absolutely sold young Anderson down the river with his poor defensive play, right? And what you need from your winger is to protect the fullback, particularly when he's 20-year-old just trying to make his way in the team. And there was one moment where Brendan Rodgers absolutely berated him on the side. He actually ran up to give him a proper rollicking, and Mickey Johnson ran away. You might not have seen it, guys, right? He's tried a wee lazy flick with the back heel, and he's given away possession. We were in control of the ball. It's come to Johnson, and he's given it away cheaply, and Rodgers went for him. So these are just observations. These are things that happened. They're not opinions, right? And if you point them out, people say you're having a go at Mikey. I made the point last week. Add up Mikey Johnson's minutes since he came into the Celtic side over 8 seasons, going into his 9th campaign, and he has played the equivalent, on average, of 5 games of football for Celtic, 5 times 90 minutes. That's not good enough. John Hughes, it's no personal vendetta. I just don't think the boy's got it. He's not. When you look at what Kühn's done last night, what Forrest has done in the pre-season, Maeda looks sharp, and even Palmer, who came in for a lot of criticism, is contributing. Mikey Johnson just isn't, for me.
Well, Paul John, first of all, we should start off by saying that, I mean, you do have the good grace to put away your Mikey Johnson voodoo doll before we start streaming.
It's right there.
So, but, the thing about Mikey is it's the same every year. I genuinely can't believe we're having this conversation again, but he flatters to deceive. So he'll do a couple of decent things, and you think there's a player in there, and then he won't do enough. He doesn't contribute enough, or he'll make mistakes that actually hurt you. So yes, I mean, he can do good things, but I just can't countenance this. We're not having this conversation again. He's going to be gone before the window's closed, unless somehow we're absolutely desperate. There's no way. Brendan Rodgers made his feelings pretty clear last season. So I think the discussion about Mikey Johnson is probably moot, because he's not going to be here, regardless of what people think. And I think you've had 9 chances, like 9 years, to prove yourself. That's a pretty decent go. I don't think you can genuinely still be sitting here and saying, but he might come good. After 9 years, he's suddenly going to become messy. No. Look, he could have a couple of good seasons for someone. He did well when he went down to West Brom, because he is a talented boy, but he's not talented enough. And the rest of his gifts, whether it's defending or consistency, and especially when it comes to finishing, it's just, I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. I cannot believe anyone would think that was a controversial thing to say after 9 years of this.
Well, see, next pre-season...
sorry, Paul John, I just saw it in the comments there, and a mate of mine made exactly the same thing when we were saying during the week. I forgot to write it down. He's due a testimonial next year.
Oh, John. Dear me. Well, see, as we enter his testimonial year in 12 months' time, we'll still be having this conversation. We'll still be having the same conversation. Listen, it's one of these situations that we're talking about it because it happened last night. If you've not seen it, have a look at that one moment, because, if you push Brendan Rodgers' buttons the wrong way, he takes action. I think he's very much... Who watched the wee clip the other day there where his manager of Liverpool's got 3 envelopes? He says, I've got the names of 3 players. Did you see it? It was proper David Brent, but we love him for it, right? I've got the names of 3 players who are going to let us down, and they're in these envelopes, right? And I'm thinking to myself, dearie me, that's pretty ruthless, right? Was it for the cameras? I'm not so sure. So he can build players up. He really can build players up. But if you get on the wrong side of him, you'll be Bernabeed to a bench somewhere in Brazil, or you'll be Haksabanovic down to Stoke City, or something like that, right? And the point again I would make is he's played under 3 managers now, right? He's played under Brendan Rodgers twice, Ange Postecoglou, and Neil Lennon. 2 of those managers loaned him out. One to Portugal, one to West Brom. Another one told him unceremoniously to F off as he was coming off the park. And he spent most of his time injured under Lenny. Go and enjoy your football career. It's not going to happen at Celtic. It would have happened before now. Go and enjoy it elsewhere. Are we being harsh, Paddy?
No, not at all. Listen, I think he's a very talented player, but I think I'm not sure who said it, but I'm pretty sure work ethic beats talent every time, or hard work beats talent every time. I'm not sure who that's attributed to, but it's definitely true. I was probably one of his last defenders, Mikey Johnson, up until about a year or two ago. I still thought he could make it. I thought he could have a chance, but there was I think just before he went out on loan to West Brom, I think it was genuinely he lost Tavernier at the back post with about 5 minutes to go in the Celtic Rangers game at New Year. And I just thought, oh come on, you've scored 2 goals up at Dundee. We thought you were going to kick on, and you're still making the same mistakes. And I've not seen that clip of him with a wee flick, but it sounds as if he's still making the same mistakes. He might be the best player in training, but if he goes on the pitch and he continues to make poor decisions, it's just not going to happen. And I think probably decision making is why it's cost him at Celtic. I think going to West Brom, all right, I think they finished fifth or sixth in the Championship. Big team in that league, but you're not going to get scrutinised for every single decision. At other teams, at lesser teams, you can lose the ball a few times and the fans won't be on your back so much. But at Celtic, you are pretty scrutinised. You need to make the right decision more times than not, and it just doesn't work out at a club like Celtic for some of these players. Some of them just can't handle the pressure. And I agree with yourself. I think he can have a fantastic career. I think he's only 25, just turned 25, so he can have another 6, 7 years possibly somewhere else. And it's all about what he wants to do. He can probably persevere at Celtic for his entire career, pick up a decent wage, get the 5 games a season that you mentioned there. But I think what's best is for him to move on. I'm not sure how long his contracts get left. I'm sure he signed a new deal late 2019, so I can't imagine he's got long left in his contract. I'm not sure if he's signed another one since then, but hopefully with the West Brom move, maybe by playing him, we're actually decreasing his value. The more people see him at Celtic top, the less they'll pay. So I think we should drop him until we sell him. And folk can remember the sort of 6 months at West Brom. They can pay the 8 million that was quoted, I think, a few months ago. Because I think his time's up, and I wish him well and wherever he goes.
Well, his contract, just to keep everybody chuffed and happy and chirpy, his contract still has 2 years to run. But I'm going to bring up the kind of comment that you get the minute that you bring up a particular player and you base it on observations, you back it up with the data with regards to the fact he's not contributed enough, and people say that you're hating on the player. We're not hating on Mikey Johnson. We're looking at the Celtic squad and we're thinking, how do we progress? Is Mikey Johnson the type of player who's going to contribute enough to progress this team and improve us, not just domestically, but also in Europe? And the point you made, Patrick, right, in relation to, I remember it against Rangers, so frustrating because you could have sold the jerseys. And if you don't have the defensive ability as a winger at Celtic, you're not going to be playing for Brendan Rodgers. You need to have the capability to defend as a winger. So it's nothing personal. He's an international player. He might even have 10 years left. He might have 10 years left of a football career. Is he going to improve the Celtic side? No, in my honest opinion, I don't think he will. Joe Hamilton, you're in. If Brendan wants Big Adam, Brendan will get Big Adam. Let's talk transfers, because every time there's a game, there is an opportunity after that particular game to talk to the gaffer and ask him his thoughts on or progress on transfers, recruitment, etc. He was asked last night after the game, and he had something quite interesting to say. This is what he said. I had a long meeting with Michael and Chris, that will be Nicholson and Mackay, today. We know the targets we want to bring in. Still a long way to go in the window. Our concentration is that we know what we want to do, the priority positions we want to improve. While the club is getting on with that, myself and the coaches were really focused on the improvements of this team, physically, tactically, and technically. Yeah, at some point before the end of August, I'd expect us to have the players we want in. So it's an update, John. It's obviously tinged with a bit of non-committal language because you don't want to say this is going to happen, because he's put it in the hands of other people now. What he's saying to me, reading that, is I'm now I've had my meeting with the guys in charge of the finances. I've told them what I want. I'm now concentrating on the team. They need to get it done before the end of August. That's what I read into that last night.
Yeah, well, the first thing is the end of August is all he's focused on. So the window closes just before the Rangers game, doesn't it? That's the Friday of that weekend, as a matter of fact. So that's what he's focused on, not like us. We're sort of focused on the start of the season and all that sort of thing. So, I took that, as positive, in as much as obviously the targets have been identified. Because if you're, what he's essentially saying there is he's passed it over to the money guys, right? So these are the guys that we want. We think we can get them. He's passed it over to them. It's now up to them to do the deals. But what it also means is he's no longer working on, recruitment or anything like that. He's washed his hands of it at this point. So that means if we don't get these guys, who's working on the fallback positions? Or are they, has he given them a tiered number of get him, if you can't get him, get this guy? So I would... it's interesting what he said, and it is an update, and it does give us some idea of what's going on and the time frame that they're working to, as opposed to the time frame that we're looking at. But it's pretty much, it's all in the hands of. It was quite clever as well, because he's basically said, if this doesn't happen, it's not down to me.
It's not my fault.
He's basically, there you go, Chris. There you go, Michael. Here's the bus coming. You boys just stand there, and if we don't get the players in that we need, I'll be just pushing you off the curb right in front of that bus. But look, it's more information than we had, although it's not really anything. It doesn't tell us who we're looking at. It doesn't tell us what positions we're looking at. Doesn't tell us what price range we're looking at. But all the, in terms, because at the end of the day, even looking at that game last night, nothing has changed in terms of who we need in. We still need between 3 and 5 players, as a minimum. And 2 of those are going to be strikers now, so we still need the same players that we needed. And that was, so it's instructive from that point of view, both in terms of what he's saying, because he obviously then acknowledges that he sees the same thing that we do. But I'm concerned that it is going to be that conversation where at the end of August that we just couldn't get them in. We couldn't get the quality we wanted, so there's no point in doing anything. And I think everyone would be sorely disappointed if that's what happens.
The thing is, John, I remember coming into the January transfer window, and at that point, if you think back, it's easy to forget, we were not in a great state as a football team, and there was some real concerns that we were going to lose the league. It's easy now to look back because there's a shambles happening over across the city, and we won the double and all this kind of stuff. But I'll tell you what, going into that January transfer window, John, we weren't as confident as we are sitting here now. And I remember the cautious member of the Acsom team was yourself. You're saying, you know what, January's not going to be a magic wand. Because at that point, I wanted the goalie. I wanted the left back, the centre half, the winger, the striker. And we brought in one loan deal and one permanent deal. And it was a wee bit underwhelming at the time, John. If we think back, it's worked out okay, of course.
It has worked out okay to an extent. It's strange. Kühn, when he came in, looked like one of the worst players we've ever seen. He was absolutely dreadful. And of course, I didn't say that because I saw his real potential. There's definitely no record of me absolutely pillorying the boy. And Big Ida came in and he looked great, but now we don't have him. I would say, if the comment that Joe made about if he wants Ida, he can get Ida. I'm not sure that's the case. He's got a very long time left on. He's got 4 years left on his contract, and the Norwich City manager, if he likes what he sees, and I'm not sure how he couldn't like what he sees. I mean, imagine having Ida as the third guy on your bench. So to them, it's going to be: is he going to be a third choice? Is he going to be second choice? If he's going to be second choice, he'll probably keep him. If he's going to be third choice, he might let him go. But it's not going to be easy to get him at all, and I think we need to be looking at alternatives outside of that, because I think it could be very, very hard to get his signature. And the Celtic board are certainly not going to throw enough money, make Norwich an offer they can't refuse, as the Godfather said. They're not going to be throwing 10, 12, 15 million at them for the guy, it's just not going to happen. So, you know, we need to be sensible and make sure, because we now have a serious problem. Because Kyogo, who is injury prone and has had, you know, 2 serious layoffs in the time he's been with us, is now our only option up front, apart from Maeda. And please don't. I know he does it for Japan, but don't at me with Maeda as a centre forward. You know, the number of chances he would take. You know, we all know what he's brilliant at, and he can be great at latching onto things. But the difference between him and Kyogo, in my view, is night and day in terms of what a striker's supposed to be doing, and how clinical a striker needs to be. So I just don't accept that as an adequate fullback position. So there's a huge amount of work to be done, and in terms of not being optimistic, that's because nothing had changed in January, and it was the same people doing the same things, and you're looking at it, and we were all doing it. We were all projecting what we thought. Oh, we're going to sort this out in January, and everyone was projecting that. But when you were objective about it, when you took a breath and you just stepped back to look at it, I don't know why anyone thought that, because it was essentially the same people doing the same things with the same attitude and the same budget. And I just didn't see that there was any way that was going to change. But look, Brendan's in charge now, and I have it, you know, in good authority, for instance, that Kasper Schmeichel deal was on the go for months and months before we heard about it. And it was finally tied up after the Euros. So Brendan is definitely in charge. And you can make your own mind up at the end of this window whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I think, you know, if I was Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay, I'd be concerned about, because I don't think Brendan's going to spare anybody if he doesn't get what he needs. You know, I mean, he was a company man during the year, and he was like, "Oh no, we're all a team, we're all working together." And you know, at one point, it looked as if we were going to lose it. So how forgiving is he going to be of these guys if they do not deliver the targets that he needs? And is he going to accept public responsibility as the face of the management of the football department? Or is he going to say it's the board that's basically not the board, it's the chief executive, essentially, that can't get the deal done? So it's going to be interesting to see, but there's still a lot of work to be done. We're in a very good mood at the moment because we've had a couple of very good games. Guys look sharp, guys look fit. You know, they really look excellent, playing good style at the moment as well. But again, these pre-season games can be hell of a, you know, they can really point you in the wrong direction in terms of things. If you think of, I mean, Adam Montgomery looked fantastic in a couple of games a couple of years ago. The wee boy Moffat looked fantastic in a couple of games. You know, there's a load of boys there that looked fantastic in some games and then just disappeared out of sight. So it is a pre-season game. They are against decent quality, though. I mean, don't forget, you know, it's probably one of the best strikers in the world on the park last night. So, you know, and can I just come back to what you said? The difference with Schmeichel and Sinisal, as soon as Schmeichel went off, we conceded a goal, which I think was down to the goalie's positioning. You know, and he should have been further over and saved it. I think Schmeichel would have saved it. But yeah, Schmeichel might be, I hope he's not, but he could well be the best bit of business we do all year.
Yeah, and he didn't cost us a penny in transfer fees, that is. So, John, when you say don't at me, is that the new version of speak to the hand? Is that what that is? Must be.
Yeah,
Must
the old
be.
talk to the hand. Yeah. And I'm just saying the thing that the in the comments here, John likes to voice his opinion, but he doesn't speak for the majority. You don't say, mate. I mean, what do you think? You think I've got a stadium full of Celtic fans that I'm taking opinions from before I come in here? You know, what a nonsense statement that is. Of course, it's my opinion. I'm just one person. It's my opinion. Don't speak for the majority. Absolute nonsense.
The thing is, John, I remember, you know, having the audacity to speak to anybody about Celtic, and that is a criticism you get. You don't speak for me. Well, I'm not trying to. I'm giving an opinion, try to be balanced. And what actually happens is going through the comments, talking to the variety of contributors that we've got on Acsom, if a point is made in such a balanced way and it's evidenced, and then you start to view things a wee bit differently yourself, these opinions can determine and influence your own opinion. So I read things. I'm not saying I just nick all the good bits for the comments, by the way, and then use them as my own opinions. I've never ever done that. But I can be influenced by good opinions and balanced debate. And that's what it's all about. And by the way, this is just a different type of platform. Back in the day, you'd have been in the Celtic supporters' buses, travelling for Fife, having the same conversations, John. And,
Absolutely.
and I always go back to, I'm not going to name and shame him. I always remember the guy that didn't rate Paul McStay on the bus.
Yeah.
And, that was a debate that we had time and time again. And he would sit there counting the amount of times McStay shot over the bar. 4 chances missed. Can he shoot for toffee? And I was like, Paul McStay is the maestro. How dare you? So you always have these conversations, and as you grow a wee bit older, the conversations happen in the pub after the game, before the game, when family are around for New Year, and you debate, and some people rate this one and hate that one and all that. That's what it's all about. That's just, healthy debate, John. Brown Warrior has come in. It's always great to see you. Kühn has the tools to be a successful winger at Celtic. It reminds me of a Gat. What a speed merchant he was, by the way, who, like Kühn, was a confidence player who just needs a performance like last night to launch his career proper at Celtic. I'm going to say something here. Here's my Nostradamus moment for the Chelsea game, Patrick, right? I watched with interest against DC United on the back of the comments that Brendan Rodgers made about Odin Holm and Boston Lowell, right? And I was watching it to see, okay, how does the player react to the comment? Because we've all heard the cliches about some players need a hand round their shoulder, other ones need a fit up the backside. And I was looking at that, I was thinking, right, how do they react to this? And what I've seen both against DC United and last night is that Odin Holm has fueled his fire with his comments. Odin Holm was very good when he came on last night. Boston Lowell, right, against DC United, that Brendan Rodgers on the sideline, he was the target of his wrath. Boston Lowell, he was put on as a sub, he was taken off as a sub. I don't know if he was injured. He was on the bench last night, he didn't get on. I'm going to predict against Chelsea, we don't see Mikey Johnson because he's not done what he was told. And I think that's the way Brendan Rodgers rolls. I think against Chelsea, you're more likely to see somebody like Yang, who didn't feature last night. The reason you thought it was Yang, Patrick, the commentary team says it was Yang for the assist. And it was actually...
He was running quite quick as well. I think that's why I thought it was Yang. He was a speed merchant. But no, I think you're right. I think we're seeing a very ruthless version of Brendan Rodgers in this pre-season. I mean, he's come out with those comments about Kelly and Vata. As you said, he's come out against Home, not against, but giving them a kick up the backside, Lawal and Odin Home. Obviously had a go at Johnson on the sideline, rightly so. And then the transfer comments, he fully expects to get all his targets by the end of the window, as he should do, as we all expect the club to do so. So I think you could be right. I think we might not see Mikey Johnson against Chelsea. It's obviously the last pre-season game. They fly back, they play Kilmarnock the following weekend. So you might see something close to what he's wanting as his starting 11 going into the Kelly game. I'd like to think Mikey Johnson isn't anywhere near that. No offence, with Palma getting his goal last night and Mikey being a left winger, he's probably third choice on that left wing now. Maeda being the first choice and Palma in second. So I think you could be right with that. I'm glad that we're seeing a more ruthless side to the manager. It's worked well so far. I think we've made, of the 2 signings we've made, I think we've shown good planning. Whether Sinisalo, I agree with John. I think he probably could have done better with that goal. He almost saves it, but in my opinion, it's a typical Celtic downfall of the keeper not coming off his line quick enough. But we've shown a great strategy. Whether Sinisalo becomes first choice, Worsley or not, time will tell. But Schmeichel's been a good buy or a good signing, a free transfer, I should say. I think going into the transfers, I think we've discussed to death what we all need, and we've got Ida and Bernardo there. I think with Kelly maybe leaving and O'Reilly, if someone meets the evaluation, also possibly going. I think Bernardo probably will need to come in. Ida will obviously need to come in for the striker position. and you're leaving yourself short in those positions. But I think in terms of what we've actually got at our disposal, I think signing a top quality centre half would boost our chances tenfold, and not only winning this league but competing at a European level. I think the new format in the Champions League benefits us. You're playing against two pot 4 teams, two pot 3 teams, and in terms of the league, I fancy us to win the league anyway. The joke is that we never win the pre-season. Well, we've somehow managed to win the pre-season this year, so I've never actually been more confident going into the actual season when we tend to, sweep up near enough every year. So this might get clipped in 9 months' time if we do going to lose the league. But based on all the evidence, I'm much more confident this season than I am last season, even though where we are right on this moment today, the squad is technically weaker than where it was on the day of the cup final last year. So, get Bernardo in, get you in, centre half, back up left back, and then we might genuinely not need a winger. But if you can get those 4 positions in, I think I would be, and most fans would be, super confident going into the domestic campaign and possibly even the European campaign.
See, this is the thing. I've always got a wish list like everybody else, and the right winger position was on it. And we've had discussions, John, about who do you think we can salvage from last season's transfer windows. Listen, 45 minutes does not make a summer. We know that, right? But Kühn might be the guy. He might be the guy that saves last season's transfer window.
Well, he certainly looks that way. And if Ida comes back, then, you can't argue that those were both turned out to be excellent signings. Now, obviously, Ida, because he was coming, third choice striker from Norwich, was met with a fair bit of, not antagonism, but certainly a bit of disdain, and Kühn was just awful when he got here for reasons we now understand a bit better. So, but both of those players, could turn out to be cracking. And given the fact that was Brendan Rodgers overcoming the Mark Lowells of the world, then that was a good result. But can I ask you 2 things, Paul John, about the game last night before I go on and mention about Rangers? Home come on for Welsh. Where was Home playing? Did he play in the middle?
He was Home was not playing like a defensive mid. He was playing more of an attacking mid.
Yeah.
He was further up the park, John. So although he maybe came on, where have I got it here when he comes on? I've maybe attributed his. I thought he came on for McGregor, but
Aye. It was what I was looking at the thing earlier on. It said Welsh, and I was sort of confused by that. But here's the other thing: how did Kwon do, really? Because you can't tell from highlights. So I'm just really interested to know how your opinion of, did he look like someone who might be coming back to us? Because obviously he had a good break and everything, but did he look like someone who was actually going to come back and make an impact?
Right. Here's the thing, John, and I'm going to qualify this before I give you my view on him. I don't rate him. Right, and that is based on the I think it was against was it the James Forrest testimonial, and he didn't look like he was anywhere near it. He gets loaned out for a season at St Mirren. St Mirren fans are raving about him, and he's on my list of guys I would loan out. But having said all that, I thought he played really well last night. He came on, he looked really assured. He sets up the goal. There was a couple of moments where he's played balls in behind the defences, quick passing. And it kind of proved me wrong last night, John. I thought he played pretty well. Whether or not it's going to be enough to keep him at the club, I'm not too sure. I think it all depends on the movement of the likes of Kelly, who's a fringe player, Matt O'Reilly, who's a first pick. But he played pretty well last night, John, I've got to say.
That's fascinating. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him there. In terms of, looking to win the league, well, we can't ever know what's going to happen for sure, but certainly in terms of our opposition across the city, that's an absolute shambles. And there should be an investigation straight away into how they're getting such a bye ball from the SFA, given all the complaints about Dundee. I'm not even joking about that. How are they getting this helping hand? And there's no punishments for that. There's nothing been done against them in a disciplinary way. They don't have a stadium in which to play. But again, the amount of money they're losing there from vendors and the people they might have to refund that they've got, concessions with, season ticket holders that might not want to go, all of that, absolute shambles. And I have never seen their fans more fatalistic. They are not. It is not the usual pre-season bragging. Oh, we're going to be so brilliant. We're going to come and get you, all the rest of it. Not at all. The majority of them are worried about finishing second. That's how bad they think they're going to be, and we know for a fact that they've got no money. So if they want to buy anybody, they're going to have to sell first, and that's a fact. That's an acknowledged fact by their manager. So the team they have is, I think they've signed about 7 boys, and about 4 or 5 of them are projects. And how good those projects are, I don't know. I don't pay any attention to actually who they signed, to be perfectly honest with you. But the bottom line is, there's 2 ways to look at that. One way to look at it is it's going to be good for us, as in it could be a much easier title, and it could allow us to focus on the Champions League. The other way is the way that I think most fans are thinking it will be looked at, is the board are sitting licking their lips going, how much do we need to put into this? How much do we need to invest? Because, we're going to win the league, all that sort of stuff. So I'm hoping with the dynamic between Brendan and Mike Nicholson, and the fact that budget would have been agreed before any of this happened, that it shouldn't impact at all in any way. But certainly, I'm not expecting a serious challenge from them this year.
Well, John, it's interesting you bring it up, because despite everything that's happening over there, Acsom, the pre-season bulletins have been solely fixated on what's happening at Celtic. We've been so focused on what's happening because there's frustrations around recruitment. We've not really discussed it much, John, right? But you bring up a couple of really decent points. I remember, and I've said this many, many times on a Celtic State of Mind, my first season ticket was at Hampden, because Celtic were redeveloping Celtic Park, and it was all planned. It wasn't an emergency move or flitting, as it were. And I always remember the figures were all out there. It was transparent. Everybody knew what Celtic were being charged for the stadium, for example, right? And the lack of transparency here, Patrick, is the one thing that's bugging me, because we're all stakeholders in Scottish football. We all pay into it, right? And you think to yourself about kind of mates rates or favourable rates for a specific team. That same team, if this happened to anybody else in a Rangers fixture, was going to be affected by it, Patrick. They'd be the first to make their statement and demand that the team gets punished, right? There's no punishment here, none whatsoever, other than the financial element that's unavoidable, that they're going to lose a lot of money. But in terms of the actual punishment, there will be no punishment. What rates are they going to get? Are they favourable rates? Why is that not transparent? I think that's the one thing that Scottish football continually gets wrong, Patrick. We're all in the dark. We're just asked, pump your money in season on season. We'll do favours for certain teams, but we'll not tell you what the rates are. We should know what they're getting charged for the National Stadium.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is I think it was owned by Queen's Park up until about 5 years ago. Hampden, it's now owned by the SFA. Obviously, that you're basically talking about Scottish football here. You're talking about the national team. You're talking about referees. You're talking about youth football. You're talking about the national stadium funding. The SFA won't have nearly as much money to play with as Celtic do at the moment. Obviously, Celtic are in a totally different universe when it comes to finances compared to the rest of the league. But these are the guys who are effectively in charge of the Scottish game, and Scottish football cannot be losing money because Rangers have made a pig's ear of buying metal for China. There cannot be mates rates for this. They should be charged the going rate. I think in terms of not being punished for the stadium with the Dundee situation, I think because they have sourced Hampden, maybe that's why. But obviously, you've got to imagine they'll be paying, top dollar, normal price to hire Hampden, which won't be cheap at all. And the amount it's going to cost to hire Hampden, as you say, refunding tickets, sponsorships, stewarding, there's all sorts of factors on top of this that match day experience is going to be that's good. They're going to be making a loss every match day that they're at Hampden, and obviously the delay in works at their stadium that will be costing them money as well. But in terms of the bigger picture of Scottish football, if it's any other team, It might have been leaked, it might have been announced. I'm hoping we'll find it out eventually how much they're getting charged per game. I think I seen a thing online. There's a scenario in which if they play their first group game at Hampden, they'll need to play all 4 of their European group stage games at Hampden. UEFA require you to play it at the same ground all 4 games. So, in my opinion, I think that'll be the Europa League they'll be playing in. But, whatever competition, they'll be playing all 4 games at Hampden. So that's another expense. And obviously, UEFA regulations as well come into that. So there'll be different specifications. But, it'll be a loss maker for them. And as John says, they're absolutely panicking. They're talking about competing with Hearts because Hearts have been, a consistently good third place team for a few seasons now in Scotland, and I'm just miles behind us financially on the park. Even the managers came out and said we need to sell players before buying players, so that's why I'm relaxed and worried at the same time. As John pointed out with our board, maybe putting the feet up a bit, thinking we're sort of sitting pretty here and don't need to spend money. But the fact is, we need to push on. We need to compete in the Champions League, or else people like myself have came on here and said it before. We need to compete in the Champions League, or else people are going to stop turning up. It's too expensive a ticket to turn up to Celtic Park 4 times a year and get horsed by Bayern Munich and narrowly lose out to teams like Copenhagen and Bodo Glimt. But you're right in what you say. When Fergus was there, I think it was 94, 95. It was all in the public domain. We paid quite a high fee at the time. I think it was seen as quite a high fee. So I'd expect nothing less for the other side of the city this time round.
Yep, they were called mean-spirited by Fergus McCann. That was his exact words, mean-spirited.
I think it's worth mentioning, Paul John. Sorry, I don't know if anyone else got this in their WhatsApp this morning, but it is certainly worth mentioning. Did you know that if Kiev get through their tie and play Rangers, neither side will have their home ground available? Dynamo because of Putin stealing it, and Sevco because of no steel to put in it.
Love it. See the thing, John, we haven't been digging them out because we've been so focused on Celtic. We could have gone to town on a situation, a shambolic scenario that they find themselves in. But the actual point you make, I think, is a serious point of discussion, right? Because there have been occasions in the past where a football team in Scotland has to step up if they want to be the second force, right? So you imagine, right, if you can, and I know it's not easy, imagine being a Jambo right now, right? And you're looking at this situation, you're going, wait a minute, they are in the worst state. It's a perfect storm right now at Ibrox, right? And you think to yourself, if we were to push on, we could be playing Champions League qualifiers the following season. And surely as a football club with any ambition, someone like Hearts, because they have been a solid third, as you said, John, they should be looking at that and thinking, let's crack on, let's push on and actually try and come second this season. But I just think that these teams, when they're given the opportunity, they bottle it. They Hibs it. Time and time again.
Yeah. And another thing, just because I know we're getting close to the end, another thing I just wanted to bring up was the fact that us going to America is a very, very good move. I know that Adidas are tripping over themselves now, are absolutely delighted because a lot of the top selling items that they have at the moment are Celtic. And the reason why it's happening now is, it was shelved 10 years ago because a certain member of Heated Driveway Productions did not want to use the Irish heritage that we have to promote the brand. Now that's a big thing in America. Stick a clover on it, and you're on a winner. And so we could do potentially massive business in America. And fortunately, the people who are now in charge, along with Adidas, have no problem in taking the Irish heritage side of the club and promoting that through merch. Because it doesn't impinge on anyone. So at the end of the day, it was a strange attitude people took in the past, and thankfully now no longer present, and hopefully we can see some real results in terms of merch and getting that out into America. And by the way, it really helps America. I hope we get a result against Chelsea, because how good does that look to a whole American audience? You know,
You're right, John.
we pumped DC United, we've pumped English champions, and if we can get a result against Chelsea, I mean, we're looking pretty good, isn't it? You know, as a side you might want to get interested in, as a side you might want to follow, because your great granddad's auntie was half Irish.
Yeah.
You know, so that sort of way.
Support the Celtics. Definitely. Yeah. No, you're right, John, because I'm not saying these fans are fickle, but it's all about the buzz, isn't it? You know, and I think I've mentioned before in terms of the influencers rather on YouTube, bouncing about with the English football jerseys, and they're getting paid to do it. But they're so influential that other kids that tune into their channels are getting into the Man Cities of this world through influencers online. And then Celtic come along and just hose all over them. DC United 4-0, Man City 4-3, hopefully Chelsea 4 or 5-0. I'd love to rub salt in the wounds at Chelsea. And then, like you say, in terms of the brand, if you want to talk about it as a brand, then it really is enhanced. One thing I would say, we spoke about the jersey getting launched the other day. Have you noticed that the crest, club crest, and the Adidas crest are getting bigger and bigger? John, is that an American sport thing for the crest to be huge?
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, it's identifiable, and it definitely is. And you know, I think this sort of relatively subtle thing that even I've got on me just now, I think that's not the kind of thing they'll be putting out there. It's the you know, it's the strips they brought out for the last couple of St. Patrick's Days and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it would be nice if, rather than people just buying it for the Irish connection, they were actually interested in the club and started to pay attention to the club. You know, so I mean, it's such a huge market. You think about how many hundreds of millions of people live there. We've got 5 million people here in the Irish diaspora as well, and we do very well merch-wise. But we certainly haven't cracked that at all, that market at all. In fact, we've not really made an attempt at it. So, but I think Adidas now, and we should get a great deal off Adidas when we go to sign with them again as well, which I hope we do, because they're loving the amount of the results they're getting from selling Celtic stuff. So. Yeah, let's hope. I mean, that's all great for the future. And hopefully, once this money starts coming into the club, as it continues to come into the club, we will continue to be dominant. But hopefully, like everyone else here, it's all very well and good to say that, but we want to see some progress in Europe. You know, because if Rangers implode, then again, we're back to the point. We discussed this last season, actually. Mm-hmm. If Rangers implode, what happens then? If they completely implode, what happens then? Because how many people are going to keep on coming to see us cantering home in a one-horse race when we're not making any progress in Europe? Europe has to be our benchmark. It's had to be our benchmark for years. We've completely ignored it because we were scared of it. We need the board to do what needs to be done to make us competitive in Europe, because there is a strong possibility that that mob across the city could in fact implode again, and I mean, you know, on a permanent basis, because they're built in financially, they're built in foundations of sand and soft loans. You cannot continue like that. And are they really going to accept the fact they could be a mid-table team? You know, like they were sort of 80s. Are they going to be in a mid-table team again, given the superiority complex that they've managed to basically take on board over the last few decades? And are they just going to accept that? Are their fans going to accept that? I would say if they do what needs to be done in order to survive, about 50% of their fan base would walk away.
Well, John, you're right. And it's been brought up, and we've been talking about what would happen if such an implosion were to come to fruition. And people keep saying to me, you know, banners on the seats, top tier closed, blah, blah, blah. Listen, there's an element of that. Of course, there's an element of that. But if you put a team on the park with players that you know are going to progress the club in Europe, I mean, see when we had the top tier closed, we had Colin, Kazim Richards and Carlton Cole playing for Celtic. Ronnie Dyler's brandy football by that stage was turgid, right? Yes, I know that he won a couple of leagues in a row and he won a double, but it wasn't working. And it was as much to do with the product on the park as it was to do with the fact we didn't have a challenger in the league. So it wasn't just as simple as saying Rangers aren't in the league, nobody's interested. I think if you put the players on the park to compete in Europe, you will keep that interest level high. And of course, there might be a possibility in the future, in my lifetime, to play somewhere else. But who knows if that's going to happen? Is it something, Patrick, that might happen this season? Could Hearts push on? Could they become the second force in Scottish football this season? What do you think?
Well, I've had another look at the table there from last season. They finished 18 points behind. They'd have to keep Shankland, I imagine. Ironically, they could sell them to the team they're competing for second with for a couple of million. You've got to look at Hearts. I can't mind how many goals he scored. I think it was sort of low 20s he scored for them last season. Can Hearts really find someone like that out there in exchange for 3 or 4 million? So can they do it? I certainly think it's possible, and it's certainly more likely than seasons gone by. Will they do it? Probably not. They're not afraid of an emergency share issue or some sort of loan from board members. Albeit they're running out of board members, they keep on resigning year on year, running out of loans to take out. But I don't think it will happen this season. But as John says, we're sort of frustrated because we keep on sort of improving financially and not spending the money, whereas on the other side of the city, they keep on getting worse financially, trying to keep up, and the gap is forever growing. And there's no way of telling how this goes because they've not recouped any money by selling players this season. They're nowhere near competing with us domestically. So, with the expectation of their deluded supporters, I think there's a big chasm there between what can and what needs to be done.
Listen, you mentioned Shanklin. Here's a wee stat for you, Patrick, right? Hearts don't have players like Shanklin very often. He scored 30 goals in all competitions last season, right? And he was the first Hearts player to achieve such a feat since John Robertson in 1988. So you're right, they wouldn't be able to replace somebody that would score that amount. It just doesn't happen. Every now and again, they'll get a striker like Robbo or Shanklin, but they wouldn't be able to go out and buy a like-for-like replacement. And I don't think Rangers could afford to buy him anyway. But listen, we'll concentrate at the Celtic, and I'm sure we'll have smatterings of laughing, John, at the other side of the city. I'm pretty sure we'll do that. But the authorities need to be held to account. There can be no mates rates. They need to be charged for the fact that they're using the National Stadium, and they have to be charged the going rate for that. Listen, it's been a busy one, right up there at 1,000 live. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Kevin Graham, he opted right to go for a dip in the pool in Santa Ponza and some lunch, and that came in at half an hour ago, John. He bailed out at half time. Amateurs, man, part-timers. Thanks everybody for your support, and thank you to John Hughes and to Patrick McGill for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.